The cosmos is an endless, starless void where the architects of all existence once sat in absolute silence. These are the outer gods, the supreme beings who spun entire galaxies from nothing and established the very laws of physics. For eons beyond counting, they labored to create a factory of life, a ceaseless machinery where miracles were born and souls flickered like tiny, fragile candles in the dark. But perfection has a way of turning into a curse. As the ages stretched into eternity, a gnawing, persistent boredom began to settle over the gods. The silence of their own immortality became a burden they could no longer bear. To stave off the madness of the void, they looked down upon the worlds they had forged and decided to turn existence into a theater of cruelty. Their gaze narrowed, focusing on the tiny lives below with a single, twisted purpose. They wanted to see their creations go to war. To these supreme beings, the annihilation of a civilization was not a tragedy to be mourned. It was a pastime. It was a game. Destruction was the only thing left in the universe that was truly interesting. Generations of mortals lived and died in a cycle of blood and agony, fighting endless wars that served no purpose other than to keep their masters amused. The gods watched from their high thrones, laughing as worlds burned. It was a small price to pay for their entertainment, or so they thought. But while the gods were focused on the spectacle, the pieces on the board began to move of their own accord. A ripple of defiance moved through the slaughter. Something happened that the architects of reality never saw coming. Deep within his celestial palace, one of the supreme beings sat comfortably on his throne, looking down at the carnage with a smile. But in a sudden, blinding flash of violence, the smile vanished. He felt the cold, sharp bite of steel against his throat. The impossible had finally occurred. The creator was being butchered by his own creation. The news of the regicide ripples across the dimensions like a shockwave. From the deepest, darkest corners of the multiverse, the other supreme beings turn their cold gazes toward the scene of the crime. They do not come to mourn their fallen brother, nor do they come to seek justice for his murder. Instead, they gather around the cosmic chessboard, looming over the tiny, fragile world that has just dared to strike back. A heavy silence falls, sharp and calculating. You might expect these deities to feel fear, or perhaps an explosive outrage that a mere creation had managed to slay a god. But as they stare down at the empty, blood-stained throne, they feel nothing of the sort. To these entities, the death of one of their own is not a tragedy. It is an opening. Their eyes do not see a crime scene. They see a buffet. They see a power vacuum waiting to be filled. The same thought fires through their collective consciousness simultaneously, shattering the peace of the void. The first to claim the ownerless power becomes its new master. A cacophony of roaring energy and greedy desperation swells to a deafening crescendo as the gods prepare to descend. Then, with the suddenness of a snapping finger, everything goes silent. The darkness of space vanishes in an instant, replaced by the bright, unfiltered glare of morning sunlight. The cosmic void is gone, and in its place, a blue sky stretches over a pristine, modern campus. It is peaceful. It is completely ordinary. The gentle rustle of wind through the trees blends with the distant, mundane hum of city traffic. Inside a sunlit classroom, a school bell chimes pleasantly. The atmosphere is light, filled with the murmurs of impressed students. A young man sits at his desk, a confident, easy grin spreading across his face. He taps his chest, looking up at the classmates gathering around him. One of them holds a bouquet of congratulatory flowers, leaning in with a smile. The young man speaks, his voice brimming with youthful pride and excitement. He is completely oblivious to the cosmic war brewing in the dimensions above, or the fact that the universe is tearing itself apart. He looks at his friends and says that he finally made it. He got into the Korea National University of Arts. The cosmic dread evaporates in an instant, replaced by the frantic, high-energy buzzing of a high school classroom. The heavy grinding of planets is swapped for the loud, sudden scrape of a chair against the floor. The classroom freezes. The boy sitting next to Suho blinks, his brain clearly struggling to compute the absurdity of what he just heard. He looks at Suho with a deadpan, confused stare and mutters that he has to be lying. Suddenly, the skepticism explodes into a riot. Hands grab Suho's shoulders, shaking him violently as his classmates erupt in high-pitched, incredulous shouting. They demand to know how someone as unrefined as him could possibly get into an arts university. It makes absolutely no sense to them. In the background, a tragic wail pierces the air as another student falls to his knees, clutching his head in sheer despair. He sobs uncontrollably, wondering why he has to repeat another year while Suho moves on. But Suho is untouchable. He throws his head back, basking in the chaotic energy of the room. His laughter rings out like a victory bell. He shouts to the ceiling that he is finally freed from this hell and says his final goodbyes to high school. The celebration is cut short, however, when a shadow falls over his desk. A distinct voice cuts through the noise. It is calm, deep, and laced with a heavy, delinquent edge. The voice says, "Suho, congrats." Suho turns to find a tall student with messy reddish hair and a hardened expression looming over him. The boy stands with his hands in his pockets, radiating an aura of forced intimidation. He says he heard Suho got into an arts university and admits he never knew Suho had such talent. Then, he asks since when Suho was ever good at drawing. Suho just blinks, looking up at the imposing figure with a casual, almost bored expression. He asks if it is Sungchul again. The air in the room thickens with a sudden, awkward tension. The red-haired boy leans in even closer, his face shadowed as he tries desperately to look menacing. Through gritted teeth, he snaps that he is not Kim Sungchul. He is Lee Yunchul. Suho just shrugs, completely unbothered, and offers a simple, "Oh, is that so?" Yunchul does not back down. He stares intensely at Suho, his voice dropping to a dramatic growl as if he is reciting a line from a gangster movie he has watched too many times. He claims that because of Suho, his plan to take over the high school was ruined. Suho smiles, a sharp, knowing glint appearing in his eye. He leans back, looking relaxed, and tells Yunchul that it is also thanks to him that Yunchul was able to graduate safely. The tension hangs in the air for exactly 1 second before the rest of the class sighs in unison. The epic confrontation dissolves into awkward, annoyed murmurs. In the corner, 2 girls sip their juice, watching the scene with dull, judgmental eyes. One of them wonders why he is still acting so childishly when they are about to graduate, and her friend just agrees with a bored, heavy sigh. The whispers in the back of the room grow softer, now laced with a heavy sense of pity. The girls watch Suho from a distance, their voices dropping to a gossiping murmur. They wonder why anyone would harass such a pitiful boy. To them, Suho is a tragic figure, an orphan who lost his parents yet somehow finds the strength to keep smiling as he moves through his days. They see him as fragile, a survivor just trying to make it to graduation. But Yunchul does not see a victim. He sees a target. The restraint finally snaps. With a feral roar that shakes the very lockers in the hallway, Yunchul launches himself forward. His fist is cocked back, aimed for a brutal blindside strike. He screams Suho's name with raw, unbridled aggression. Then, a sharp whip crack sound pierces the air, followed immediately by a heavy, breathless impact. It all happens in the fraction of a second. Yunchul's fist is inches from the back of Suho's head, and then, suddenly, it is not. Suho does not panic. He does not even fully turn around. He simply shifts. It is a blur of motion, precise and terrifyingly fast. He catches the attack and redirects the momentum with the casual ease of someone swatting a fly. The sound of a body hitting the floor echoes through the room, followed by the long, heavy slide of a person across linoleum. Gravity seems to invert for Yunchul. The world spins violently as he is tossed aside like a ragdoll by a force he cannot comprehend. Suho clicks his tongue, a vein pulsing on his temple as his patience wears thin. He looks down at the fallen boy, not with fear, but with sheer irritation. He mutters to himself, wishing they could just live a quiet life until graduation. Time seems to freeze as a heartbeat pulses loudly in the silence. Yunchul sprawls on the floor, gasping for air, cold sweat beading on his forehead. His pupils tremble, dilating in pure shock. The logic of the fight just does not add up. The speed was too high. The weight behind that throw was impossible. He pants heavily, his voice trembling as he asks what that was. A low, electrical hum begins to rise, sounding like high-voltage static. As Yunchul stares up in terror, Suho clenches his fist. And there, for just a fleeting second, the ordinary world cracks open. Azure sparks dance across his knuckles, a faint, blue energy crackling with raw, supernatural power. The low hum of static explodes into a high-pitched, manic shriek of adrenaline. The fear on Yunchel's face doesn't last. That moment of confusion twists instantly into something far more dangerous. It is pure, unadulterated ecstasy. He doesn't back down, and he doesn't ask questions. He simply lunges. His voice cracks with a maniacal laughter as he shouts at the top of his lungs that it didn't hurt at all. His fist, now fully wreathed in that unnatural blue flame, tears through the air like a comet. Suho's eyes widen. He realizes in a heartbeat that this isn't a schoolyard brawl anymore. Instinct takes over, and he throws himself to the side just as the blow connects. It doesn't hit him, but it finds the steel lockers directly behind where his head had been. There is a deafening, metallic explosion. It sounds like a grenade going off inside a tin can. The entire classroom shakes. Dust and drywall erupt into the air, clouding the room in white grit. Terrified screams erupt from the girls in the corner as students scramble back, knocking over desks and tripping over chairs. Their eyes bulge in complete disbelief at the violence of the impact. As the dust begins to settle, the terrifying reality of the situation is revealed. The heavy steel locker door isn't just dented. It is obliterated. The metal is caved in as if it had been struck by a massive wrecking ball, and thick grey smoke curls lazily from the center of the impact. Suho sits on the floor, staring up at the destruction. A cold sweat finally breaks his composure. He thinks to himself that what he just saw was not human. It couldn't be. Yunchel stands amidst the debris, his chest heaving with heavy, ragged breaths. He looks down at his own hand, watching the blue aura flicker around his arm like a living, hungry thing. He flexes his fingers, staring at them with a mixture of confusion and absolute intoxication. He whispers to himself, wondering what is happening. He can feel it now. The surge. A raw, ancient power is coursing through his veins, a strength he has never known before. Suho slowly pushes himself up from the ground, his eyes locked on the glowing figure of his classmate. All the annoyance from before is gone, replaced by a grim, razor-sharp focus. In the heavy silence, only the sound of breathing and the crackle of energy remains. Suho doesn't say a word, but his expression says everything. The world has just changed. The high-energy shrieks of the classroom fade away into the distance, replaced by the low, rushing sound of the wind. A heavy, somber cello note plays, marking the slow, inevitable passage of time. The dust has settled. The seasons have turned. And the world has moved on. 2 years later, the modern city hums at twilight. There is the distant wail of sirens, the low thrum of heavy traffic, and the crisp crunch of autumn leaves underfoot. The campus of the Korea National University of Arts is bathed in the cool, artificial glow of streetlights. Through the thickening evening mist, a figure walks alone. He is taller now, his stride purposeful and relaxed. The boyish grin he once wore is gone, replaced by a calm, almost stoic maturity. This is Sung Suho, now a second-year university student. He adjusts the strap of his backpack, blending effortlessly into the shadows of the campus. But a sudden ripple of noise breaks his concentration. A crowd is gathering, their murmurs growing louder and more agitated. Suho stops. His eyes narrow as he shifts his gaze toward the main building. The sharp, piercing squeal of megaphone feedback cuts through the air. A voice booms out, distorted and urgent, echoing off the concrete walls. The speaker warns that all lessons in the main building have been moved to the annex. Everyone is ordered to move there immediately. The scene ahead is a spectacle of controlled chaos. Bright yellow police tape flutters in the wind as uniformed officers struggle to push back a sea of curious students and annoyed faculty. Officers shout over the crowd, telling everyone to stay back. They announce that the hunters are already inside, moving to subjugate the monsters. In the background, there is a low, pulsating thrum. It is the distinct, unsettling sound of a magical gate warping the very fabric of reality. Suho stands at the edge of the police line, watching the swirling blue vortex that has torn open the air near the university entrance. He does not look afraid. He looks as though he has seen this 1,000 times before. Near the barrier, 2 officials in dark suits stand by a car, their faces illuminated by the eerie, flickering glow of the dungeon. One of them checks his watch, his voice sounding professional and slightly bored. He asks how long it has been since the hunters went in. His partner exhales a cloud of smoke and checks a clipboard. He says it has been slightly over 8 hours. He figures that since this gate is only estimated to be a D rank, the hunters should be coming out any minute now. The crowd swells with a restless energy, a volatile mix of nervous excitement and genuine, cold fear. An official waves his arms frantically, his voice straining to be heard over the rising chatter. He shouts for everyone to back up, warning that this area is lethal for anyone who isn't a hunter. Behind the police line, students huddle together, their eyes wide and glassy, reflecting the eerie, flickering blue light of the dimensional tear. A girl whispers with a trembling voice, asking if the school will be destroyed, but a boy nearby dismisses her, trying to sound brave as he says the hunters will take care of it. They always do. Amidst this rising panic, Suho stands perfectly still. The blue light washes over his face, casting deep, sharp shadows over his eyes. He doesn't look away. He looks at the swirling vortex with a dry, weary familiarity. He thinks to himself that it is just another gate. Suddenly, the ambient city sounds begin to warp and distort, slowing down until the world seems to stop. A deep, ominous boom resonates through the air like a heavy war drum, and the narration shifts, taking on a grand, somber tone. It started 3 years ago. The day the sky itself tore open. Gates began to appear across the entire globe, fracturing the laws of physics and plunging modern civilization into absolute chaos. These weren't just anomalies, they were passageways. They were doors to dungeons filled with horrors that defied every law of evolution. And once the invisible clock tucked away inside those gates ticked down to 0, the doors opened. The sound of wet, chittering insect legs and guttural roars filled the streets. Monsters poured out. Giant, armored centipedes that crushed cars like soda cans and wolves the size of tanks with eyes like burning embers. They surged into the world with one singular instinct: to hunt. But as humanity teetered on the very brink of extinction, the world fought back. People began to change. As if the planet itself were mounting an immune response, certain individuals awakened to a new, incredible power. Mana. They weren't just soldiers anymore. They were superhumans. Swords of light began to cut through thick beast hide, and shields of pure energy held back the tide of the nightmare. These awakened stood as the only line of defense between the monsters and the innocent. The chaos was predicted to last for decades, but order returned much faster than anyone could have hoped. An awakened named Wu Jinchul stepped forward from the rubble. He organized the scattered survivors, gathering the awakened under one single banner. He created the Hunter Association, and with it, a new profession was born to clear the dungeons before they could ever break. The era of the hunters had begun. The soaring orchestral music dies down, replaced by the intimate, tactile sound of charcoal dragging across textured paper. Scritch, scritch, scritch. The dust of the apocalypse has settled, but it left behind a world irrevocably fractured. Society is no longer defined by race, wealth, or creed. It has been sliced cleanly into 2 biological castes, the awakened and the non-awakened. Inside the quiet sanctuary of the university art studio, Suho sits alone. His hand moves with rhythmic precision, the charcoal stick dusty and dark against the white canvas. He isn't drawing a hero. He is sketching a shadow, a small, struggling thing. The scratching sound grows faster, more aggressive. Suho thinks to himself that there are people in this world who can only survive by crawling like ants, scraping for every crumb of reward. Then, with a harsh, decisive slash of charcoal across the page, his thoughts turn darker. And then, he thinks, there are others who can simply reach out and grab whatever they desire. The quiet of the studio fades, replaced by the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of a labor site. There is the sound of heavy trash bags being dragged across gravel, labored breathing, and the clatter of construction debris. The reality hit the ants fast. A worker, grime-streaked and exhausted, hauls debris until his muscles scream. He looks up, not with hope, but with resignation. Because standing above him, barely breaking a sweat, is an E-rank hunter. The truth is cold and factual. The limits of this world are absolute. No matter how hard the non-awakened work, no matter how much they bleed or struggle, they can never bridge the gap. The distance between a normal human and even the weakest awakened is infinite. Back in the art studio, the ambient hum of the room returns. Suho stops drawing. He stares at his hand, covered in charcoal dust, his expression unreadable. The equation of this new world is brutal, but simple. If the hunters fail to close the gates, the world is destroyed. The shield drops, and humanity goes extinct. Suho looks up, his eyes sharp, piercing through the comfortable illusion of the campus. He realizes that, in other words, without the awakened, ordinary people cannot survive. A heavy pause follows, marked by a low, dissonant drone that highlights the terrifying imbalance of power. Because while the ordinary people need their protectors, the awakened, they can survive perfectly fine without us.